Welcome back to the Ohio State Pick Show. On the podcast, we're making picks for Ohio State at Purdue on Saturday. Doug Lesmerises, Bill Landis, Austin Ward. We'll have our, pick of the North, a little fancy North pick. At the end, we each have two Ohio State prop bets, but we are here primarily to discuss this game, I guess, Bill. What is the football conversation around this game? We have to get into the strange past of Ohio State in West Lafayette, at least a tiny bit. We can discuss how that does or does not actually affect the football and the betting and the thinking and the game script for this. But let's talk about the football. Can Purdue hang based on the football in this game?
I don't think so. I don't think this is a particularly good Purdue team. We've seen what good versions of Purdue teams look like, and Ohio State has lost to some of them. So I don't think like that. While the history is worth acknowledging and talking about, and I suppose reminding people of, this does not feel like the same thing. Like there were specific circumstances in all of those losses in West Lafayette that I think help explain them at least a little bit. If it were to happen in this game, which I don't think is going to happen, it would shock me, because this is just not a Purdue team, I think, that is built to hang with Ohio State or really any of the top teams in the Big Ten. And coming into the year, like, I was curious about them. I thought like maybe they could have a little something. Like Ryan Walters coming over from Illinois, his former defensive coordinator there. Like maybe he can make Purdue pretty good defensively right away. That's not really happened. Hudson Card transfers in to play quarterback. Like maybe he's got a little something to him. Perhaps a change of scenery can bring out a different level of play. That's not really happened. And now on top of that, they're injured. Like they have a handful of key injuries in this game too. So this to me feels like and it's like weird. Like Ohio State doesn't need a get right game. They won by 20 last week. But if the offense is trying to get a little more efficient, like work out some kinks, I think this is a game for them to do that.
Ohio State favored by 19. The total is 49, Austin. When you thought about game script, your pick, did you take into account any of the past? Is there any spooky, it's wet and wild and wacky in West Lafayette, that affected your thinking when you went down to say, this is my pick, or no?
Not really. Because if it's going to get wonky, which is another West Lafayette W buzzword.
Before the show, Berm told us how much he loves alliteration. So now we're going to say as many W words on this. Wonky. Yeah. Keep going, Austin. I'm going to write down the W words.
And weird and wacky.
Weird.
And if Ohio State winds up in the wilderness, like you never see that coming. Like that is unexpected. These upsets, you don't know what causes them. It's unpredictable. That's what makes them upsets. So I didn't factor that in because I'm just looking at a team that is dramatically more talented than the other. Yeah, it's a road game. Yes, I think it's a little odd that the spread is the exact same for this game against Purdue as it was for Maryland last week, because I actually think that Maryland is considerably better than Purdue, believe it or not. If it gets weird, I think that that's a strange way to approach a bet or an expectation for the game. Like, I'm just going to assume the best of circumstances, and if we have to adjust what happens live, so be it. But when these teams play under normal circumstances, 9 times out of 10, it should be a comfortable Ohio State win.
So Ohio State has lost 5 of the last 8 times it has gone to West Lafayette, and you got to talk about it. I've been covering this team for almost 2 decades. It's the weirdest part of what I've encountered. I mean, it is, right? For Ohio State fans, like, what's the weird? I thought maybe it's like an off-season thing. Maybe random is the right word, although it doesn't start, maybe wandom. Now it's like Bugs Bunny. Oh, it's very, very random. So, like, it doesn't make sense. And to do a whole show about, hey, what's the thing about your team that is the most random thing about your program? The fact Ohio State in its history in Bloomington, Indiana, it's the other Big Ten program in the state of Indiana. Ohio State is 29-2-1 in Bloomington. They've lost 5 times in West Lafayette since 2000. That's like, when you think about the comparisons, they've lost more times in West Lafayette in the last 20 years than they've lost in Ann Arbor. Like, it's like this is
or to Michigan, period, right?
That's the thing. Like, this is none of it. They haven't. I sent it to our texters this week. If you're a text subscriber, 614-662-4509. Like, to find 5 road losses for Ohio State against all the Big Ten foes, how far back you have to go. All right. So 5 Big Ten losses at Purdue, you go back to 2000. For Minnesota, you go back to like the 30s. Like, that's what we're talking about. It's so weird. But almost all the time, these losses you don't see coming with Ohio State in the modern era, there's usually an NFL guy, right? So the 5 Purdue losses, 2 of them are in years when Ohio State was terrible. So 2004, it's the last reset year for Ohio State. They lose 4 games. They lose at Northwestern. They lose at Purdue. They lose to everybody. They're resetting from 02-03 into the 05-06-07 run, okay? And then 11, they get an extra point blocked. 11 is chaos. So those are 2 of the 5 losses in West Lafayette. That's not applicable here. Those are like the 2 worst Ohio State teams of the last two decades. That's not applicable. The other 3 games are NFL guys. 2000, Drew Brees. Might have heard of him. Threw for 455. I don't know. No offense to Hudson Card, who I thought might be good. He's not Drew Brees, even though he's from Texas. 2009, Ryan Kerrigan. Now, we didn't know it going in, but he had 3 sacks. It was like, oh, he's going to be a first-round pick and play in the NFL for 12 years. Okay, Ryan Kerrigan blew it up. Last time in 18, Rondale Moore, 170 receiving yards. He's a freshman, but we knew we had an idea of Rondale Moore. So, like, it's not Landis. It's not a bad Ohio State team. And I don't think there is a secret NFL dude lurking in West Lafayette. Now, famous last words, right?
Yeah.
Now, like, Deion Burks is a pretty good receiver. I don't think he's Rondale Moore. I think they have a defensive guy who might be projected to be a 6th-round pick or something. So, like, that on the football, I don't see the hidden Purdue gem that has a chance to take over this game, which has happened 3 of the times when Purdue's beaten them.
Yeah, I don't see it either. Like TJ Sheffield's another good receiver who is a fairly highly rated recruit. Tyrone Tracy, their running back, like, has looked explosive at times this year, but he's not going to play this week. Devin Mockabee, like, kind of came out of nowhere last year and, like, was a really good story for them. I don't think he's been quite as good this year as people were hoping he would be. Honestly, like, their best offensive player, like, might have been their right tackle, Marcus Embo, who's also not playing in this game. So I don't see it. Maybe there's a guy or 2 on the defense that could give Ohio State a little bit of problems, or like guys you have to be at least aware of. But I don't think there's a guy, like a surprise scary guy, and certainly not one who's a household name on this roster.
All right.
I actually like Hudson Card a good amount, Doug.
You do?
Yeah. And
I wanted to like him, Austin, but I feel like now what he's done this year, I can't anymore.
Yeah. And I think he got a little bit of a raw deal at Texas. I mean, that's it was bound to happen based on what they were lining up for the future with Quinn Ewers. Like, that was inevitable. So I thought he wasn't going to be a transformative player for Purdue, at least not with the skill players that they don't have in year 1 there, as they're in this latest iteration of their rebuild. But I remember watching him in high school and going down there to Lake Travis and thinking, like, this guy's got a fair amount of athleticism. And there were some games that he did play at Texas from, like, you could maybe build some things around him, but he's not going to create some of the same issues probably that Talia did a week ago with Maryland, because he has not proven at that high of a level, and he doesn't have the same offensive system or remotely as good of skilled players around him.
Was he Garrett Wilson's quarterback?
Yeah. He came in, and Matthew Baldwin got hurt in that state championship game that I was down there. Hudson Card played off the bench. He was like playing on both sides of the football, and then he was the starter for another game where I went down. So I watched him play a couple times actually, and maybe that's why that's the bias in my mind. Like, I thought he played really well in Texas high school football, and he threw to Garrett Wilson that last year, so that also probably made him look a little better.
Were you just going down to Texas to eat Torchy's tacos with Matthew Baldwin like Landis was, or were you actually watching football?
It's convenient because Lake Travis in New Braunfels, Texas, where my parents live, is pretty close. So I would just I made a couple 2-for-1 trips down there. Nice. Yes, there is a conveniently located Torchy's Tacos within a mile of that stadium. And both times we went there. That's correct.
Guess what? I'm eating Torchy's Tacos tonight here in suburban Columbus. Think about that, Landis.
Love that.
Coming on up.
Maybe I've been to that Torchy's Tacos too many times. I was just going to say, like, I think there is there is a good version of Hudson Card that I think can be dangerous. So like I don't think like Ohio State should be totally dismissive of him, and I don't think Jim Knowles was when talking about him this week. He acknowledged the things that I think could potentially show up with Hudson Card. Like he does have a little bit of playmaking to him. He does have a strong arm. To Austin's point, like he's had some good games against Big 12 teams in particular. Not so much this year, but against Big 12 teams for sure. And I think I might have said this on Kings of the North maybe when I was earlier in the year, like the fact that he didn't beat out Quinn Ewers, I think makes people think that he's not a particularly good quarterback. I wouldn't be that dismissive of him. I do think he's got a little something to him. Like he still might be, right? He's the best quarterback in the Big Ten West, right?
Deacon Hill at Iowa. Deacon Hill.
Oh, the guy who completed 6 passes last week. Yeah.
I was like everything you're saying about Hudson Card, I was totally open to this year. 14 sacks, 5 picks in 6 games. And like you watch him and I feel like he's holding the ball to be a playmaker and then like the plays aren't coming, but the sacks are. So it's good to throw this stuff in there so that if, Ohio State goes over and loses to West Lafayette again, we at least have a clip where we can be like, well, we kind of warned you, even though we didn't really mean it. All right. We're going to take a tiny, tiny quick break. When we come back, we'll actually make our picks on the Ohio State Pick Show for Ohio State at Purdue on Saturday. All right, Doug, Austin, oh, go ahead, Berm.
You guys froze. Did my audio stop entirely during that first part or not?
No, your audio kept going. Your video froze, but your audio was fine.
Okay. Just check.
That just went long with Berm, so I decided to throw in a break. We'll do picks now. 3, 2. Doug, Austin, Bill, back for picks at Purdue. Austin Ward, you are our leader. You are our hero. You are our only hope. You are 5.
Keep going. Keep going. I like this. This is the best segment ever.
We clip this one out. So we do the total on the Ohio State game and against the spread on the Ohio State game. So they played 5 games. That's 10 picks. Austin's 5-5. Bill and I are 2-8. So just keep that in your head as you evaluate who you should pay attention to. So listen to Austin, maybe take a little nap when Bill and I make our picks and then come back for the props. Austin, what are you saying for this week?
I think that I have something in my mind about Ohio State, and maybe I'm crazy, maybe I'm getting too wacky, but I feel like Ohio State's chopped up this season into segments, and like Maryland was just whatever, get through it, and then you ramp back up the next week, and then Penn State is after that. So why am I saying that? Because like Western Kentucky was the most complete performance of the season for Ohio State, and there was really no good reason for that. They didn't have to do that, except maybe they wanted to be feeling good, build momentum, and get ready for Notre Dame the week after that. So maybe this is silly. Maybe this is not the way Ohio State is designing it, but they know that Penn State is going to be a week later after Purdue and that they need to be playing their best football of the season and feeling good and feeling confident and feeling ready for that challenge. So if they're in a ramp back up stage, which is the crazy approach and a way to attack this portion of the schedule for Ohio State, then I'm thinking that they might. I think that they'll go out and handle business with another complete performance on both sides of the ball, and I think that they will win 45-10 at West Lafayette with a win and a cover and an over. I'm taking all of that.
So let me ask both you guys, when we think about expecting Emeka Egbuka not to play, when we think about, I don't know, Marvin Harrison Jr. is dealing with something. They got Penn State next week. Would they maybe dial him back? Travion Henderson is back from an injury, but I don't know. Landis, like, do you try to factor in when you're making a pick, when you're thinking about overs and unders, when you're thinking about the spread, Ohio State maybe getting out in front and pulling back a little bit? Like, did you take that into account at all?
Yeah, I did. I think the best version of Ohio State's offense like really puts it on Purdue this week, but I don't know that we're going to see that because of the injuries, because of weather potentially. Like I don't know what it's quite going to be like, right? It looks like it might rain. It looks like it could get a little windy at times. Like I don't think it's going to be like the Northwestern game last year, but that could have an impact on the ability to throw the ball. And if Ohio State gets into a game where it needs to run more, like I just don't know what that's going to look like, even against a team like Purdue that doesn't play great run defense. And Iowa kind of ran all over them last week too. So my number was a little lower because of that. It's still, I'm still fairly high in a comfortable win, but yeah, there's enough going on with the offense that I don't think we quite see like, pure fireworks this week.
Did you factor that in any way, Austin?
A little bit, because I think that they're not necessarily a Mecca Ibuka, because I think there is probably an opportunity where if Ohio State put Xavier Johnson in there more and let him do things that aren't just like pure gimmicks and the opponents know what's coming, like he can run the full offense. And I think he can do enough Emeka Ibuka like things that the offense would be fine. But this may, and that may lead to Brandon Ennis or Carnell Tate getting some reps that I think they would really be gung ho about and like putting stress on Purdue in that regard. So Emeka doesn't necessarily factor in as much for me. The part that's in the back of my mind is what Bill alluded to, which is that there's probably a better than average chance that Ryan Day and Justin Fry really want to get something figured out and rolling on the ground. And even if you find that success, it's probably not going to be a 100% efficient rate that they do it at. So 45 to me is actually a score that I think has knocked off a touchdown or two from what Ohio State could put up in the best circumstance. If it was in the horseshoe, if it was 70 degrees and sunny, like they could really run away from this version of Purdue. So even though 45 is probably, I don't know, it might be the most I've predicted for Ohio State to score in a game this year, or close to it. This is still like a less than full throttle prediction for me.
So Austin's total is 55. The over-under is 49. Ohio State has gone under 4 out of 5 games this year. Landis, what's your score?
38-10 Ohio State. So I am going under for the reason you just stated, for some of the reasons we just talked about with the offense maybe encountering. I don't even know if like hiccups is the right word. I just maybe they don't score every time they have the ball, right? We have seen like they played Purdue in the shoe, was that 2 years ago, and they just like lit them up. Like that's on the table, I think, but I'm less inclined to believe that that's going to happen. I kind of feel like maybe there's a defensive score in this game for Ohio State because of Hudson Card's proclivity for turning the ball over a little bit this year. I think that Purdue's offensive line is going to have a heck of a time trying to protect him in this game. They did not protect him well against Iowa last week, and they've got at least one new starter up there now in place of their right tackle. So I don't think Purdue does much of anything on offense. Maybe they have a good script to come out and move the ball early, but Jim Knowles has adjusted so well this year that I have really no fear of Purdue consistently moving the ball or putting up points. Like they're pretty good on third down. Maybe they hold it a little bit, but they're not a team that's put up a ton of points this year. I'm not worried about that. And I think Ohio State's offense looks better than it did last week, like more balanced, I think, than it looked last week, if only because Purdue's defense, I think, is a little susceptible to getting beat on the ground more so than Maryland's was. So a comfortable win for Ohio State, 38-10. It's a cover for the Buckeyes, but I'm taking the under because I don't believe in Ohio State's ability to like really light up a Big Ten team just yet, and I don't think Purdue is going to hold up its end of the bargain to get that over.
All right. That is an under and Ohio State cover from 2-8 Landis. Now 2-8 Doug is going 49-13 Ohio State. I do think this is a chance to let it rip as long as it's not terrible weather. I think the version of the offense that Ohio State showed in the second half at Maryland last week, I'm sort of expecting that version of the offense both halves, or at least maybe for 3 quarters until they, pull it back a little bit in the fourth quarter. Some of my prop bets are related to this, that I just don't know that Purdue has a lot to stop Ohio State. And I do think Hudson Card gets a little loose with it. I think the idea of, if not a defensive score, at least maybe a short field or two based on a bad pick here or there, or a strip sack kind of thing because he's holding the ball. I think that's in play. I don't think they have to, 7 touchdowns for me. I don't think that means 7 75-yard drives. I think the defense will set them up for some things. So I just think it's going to be pretty easy. And I feel like, they did it against Western Kentucky. I feel like, as Austin, you kind of said, you're kind of waiting for this again, that like to go into the Penn State game kind of full throttle offensively. I think they know what this defense is. But this Penn State defense they're going to face next week might be the best defense in the country. So I think they want to show everything. They want to reinforce everything. Yes, that means running the ball with Trevion Henderson back, but Kyle McCord, has a little ankle thing and didn't play great the first half last week, came back in the second half. I think you want to get Kyle going again. So it's like one of these things. I'm like, Austin, 45. Ugh, that's a lot of points. Are you sure about this? And I'm like, 49. I'm just asking questions. I'm not doubting you early on. I'm just trying to tease people what I'm going to pick. I'm in agreement with you of like, I think we see it from the Ohio State offense.
Yeah. And I think that there's also an element of at play here where we've talked about, Ryan Day paying attention to the outside noise and skeptics and proving a point. Well, this week it's like, hey, remember you used to be able to score a lot of points. Like, what happened to that? And like, maybe he'll be like, well, you want to see something? Watch this. And here comes mesh concepts and deep throws and play action and like no, set up runs into the boundary. Like, he does a pretty good job most of the time of like completely ignoring and not responding to everything. And you asked him a question about that a week or two ago after the Lou Holtz thing, but the stuff that he can't ignore is like when we're in the Woody Hayes Athletic Center on a Tuesday and it's like, you have problems with this on offense. Like you're not scoring enough points. And it was that way even on Saturday in the post game with, some of the questions that I asked him after went over to Maryland. It's like, there may be an element at play where he's like emptying the bag this week to prove a point and to get everything ready and worked out for Penn State.
Because there's a point of like, sometimes you want to save it for a big opponent. And sometimes you want to like put stuff on film to give Penn State a whole bunch of different stuff to try to prep for and think about next week. So we're all picking Ohio State to cover. Austin is an over. I am an over. Landis is an under. And again, we haven't been the best, Landis and I, at the picks. But we're coming back with our prop bets, and these are going to work. We don't promise, but we're doing our very best. We'll do that next on the Pick Show. All right, time for some props. We each make Ohio State prop bets. 1-2 for Austin, 1-2 for Landis, 1-2 for me. Austin, get us rolling. It's so exciting. You are 91 cents under. What we do with this, right? We each do 5 bets a week. It's the Ohio State total, the Ohio State spread, 2 prop bets, and 1 Northern bet. We're betting $10 of fake American cash on these bets.
Beans.
Oh, it's beans.
We have slices of beans. Yeah.
Yeah. So when we say we're losing X amount of money, it's based on the fact of each week we're making 5 $10 bets. And we're tracking money instead of just record, because sometimes your bet is like, hey, it's a parlay that's plus 360. So then like you win more money. We haven't won those that much. Austin actually won one last week. Also, I'm calling you. Well, we wait till we get. You got to stick around for his Northern bet. You must wait for his Northern bet. You won't believe it. I can't believe it. You won't believe it. But Ohio State props first, and Austin has figured something out, and we are worried that the sports book machine is going to come to Austin's door. Like he's counting cards in Vegas because he has found a secret. And I think he's going to continue to try to exploit it. Yes.
Yeah. There are several hacks available right now. And so these are just for beans, and this show is for fun. And we are not professional handicappers. I think that is worth reminding. Well, Bill's not for sure, but if you want to follow some advice, I've said it every week, and I was shocked when Bill got to switch one of his props last week and he didn't take Cade Stover on the over yardage. The only adjustment you'll see above me, that's not the bet I'm making, but I'm telling you it's available every single week, and the number is not high enough. They have adjusted it from 27 to 29 through the first 4 to 5 games. This week it's 37. Cade Stover is not Marvin Harrison, but he's just pretty close in terms of someone that Kyle McCord wants to look to as a favorite weapon. They finally hooked up for a touchdown last week, and that option to get plus 200 on Cade Stover finding the end zone is still available to you this week. And without Emeka Egbuka being one of those options in the red zone, without maybe, if you want to scale back Marvin Harrison, or if Travion's, need to be monitored a little bit with his injury getting ready for Penn State, the number 1 red zone target this week may well be Cade Stover, and the odds are still in your favor. Take Cade Stover at yardage or touchdown. Either way, make a little money. I promise you. Wait, I can't promise it. I'm not allowed to promise. Never mind.
No, we'll get
just
sued
do
for
it.
that.
I just suggest you do it.
Yeah. Plus 200. Cade Stover anytime touchdown on DraftKings for Austin's first prop. What's your second prop?
So I didn't love the odds on either just the touchdown bets specifically or the yardage for Kyle McCord. But if this game script theory that I believe, like Ryan Day is going to ramp it up, they want to show more of the offense and prove some people wrong and get ready for Penn State. Like most of that success, I believe, has to come through the air. That is what Ohio State does best. That's what the offensive line does best. Kyle McCord's throwing deep balls even when he's got a little bit of a banged up ankle. And he has proven that he can get those yardage in big chunks down the field. So if you were able to put it together in a single game parlay, which I was at DraftKings, you could take over of just 1.5 touchdowns, which now the Power 5 stat is gone. He did that last week against Maryland. I think that he will do that again against Purdue. In my mind, I think it'll happen early, but that you don't have to do that to win this bet. Over 1.5 touchdowns and over 285.5 yards against this a little bit suspect Purdue secondary. Don't think they're going to get a ton of pressure when Ohio State drops back to pass. With or without Emeka Egbuka, there are enough weapons for Ohio State to get to those points. So it's not the craziest prop I've ever made, but at plus 129, I felt like it was a relatively safe approach.
Yeah, I like the McCord bets this week. And then again, as long as the weather isn't ridiculous, I don't know that Purdue as a football defense is going to prevent him from doing the things that you are predicting here, Austin. All right, Landis, you had a prop bet on the show last week that was a Travion Henderson prop bet, and then Travion Henderson was scratched. So that bet would have been scratched. So we said, hey, Bill, how's it going, fella? Do you want to make a new bet? Try to go 5-0. You're like, yeah, man, I'll go 5-0. And then you picked the Cade Stover under. And Austin almost drove to your house. Like, I don't even know. Were you trolling Austin in our Slack conversation? I don't know what happened. You didn't want to ride on the Ward train and ride that Cade Stover bet to victory. You went anti-Austin, and it didn't work.
Yeah, I was bullied into making a pick on the fly. Mere minutes before the start of the game, you guys jumped in the Slack and said, hey, Travion's not playing, which we certainly didn't know the night before. What are you going to do for one of your prop bets? And I panicked and I picked the Cade Stover under. It was a mistake. I just typed the wrong thing and I didn't even mean to pick it. I don't think it should count. I don't think it should count against my record.
Landis' all of his bets all year typos.
Yeah, that's all. That's all they've been. That's all.
O's and U's are easy to mix up. They
sure are. Yeah,
they're
almost right next to each other.
Reenact us bullying. Me and Austin getting together and bullying Landis. What actually that would look like? Hey,
the bullying. The bullying was
make a pick, man.
He made the pick, and I said, "What are you doing?" That was when I tried to bully him. Like, take the over. You said you wanted to go 5-0. Here's free beans. Free beans.
But I was almost right.
That's true.
The touchdown went for longer than 27 yards.
Yeah, but they didn't throw a ball in his direction until like the halfway point of the third quarter. I was feeling pretty good about it until that point. But yeah, that was wrong. And so was my 4 touchdowns in each half. There's only 2 in the first half. I think there were 4 in the second half, but there were only 2 in the first half. So I didn't get that right either. So now we're back on the road to 5-0 this week, which is totally fine. So my first prop bet is Cade Stover anytime touchdown plus 200.
It worked.
Yeah.
Bullying works. That's the lesson here, Austin. Bullying works.
So here's the thing. I'm either right with Austin or I'm making his record worse because now we're linked together with my terrible pick. So either way, I feel like I win. But it does feel like good value on the Cade Stover touchdown for the football reasons that Austin explained. No Emeka Egbuka, maybe Cade becomes even more a focal point in the passing attack this week. 2-1 on a guy who is like their third most targeted receiver, maybe my second most targeted receiver by this point this year, feels very good to me. So I think anytime that number's there, it's probably worth taking. So taking that as my first prop bet. My second prop bet is Hudson Card under 206.5 passing yards. That would be a season high allowed by Ohio State's defense. They've only allowed 200 passing yards once. That was to Western Kentucky. They held Talia Tagovailoa and what I think is a pretty good passing attack to 196 last week. And I just have a hard time seeing Purdue get there. Now, maybe if it's a runaway, like you guys are saying, and like it's an early runaway, maybe Purdue has to throw it more, and my bet kind of gets screwed here. But I think the combination of Ohio State's really good defense, like good passing efficiency defense, the fact that they have not really given up a big chunks of passing yards this year, and the fact that I think that Purdue's offensive line is going to have a long day against Ohio State, I feel pretty comfortable with this. So it's not tremendous odds, right? It's minus 115, but I'm just trying to win, man. I'm tired.
Yeah.
We're not even looking for the juice anymore. We're just trying to get W's because I haven't had enough of them.
Okay. I like those bets. I was wrong. I had Tagovailoa over, I think, like 236 passing yards last week, and it didn't happen. So again, the idea that this Ohio State defense, they are about the best defense in the country and not giving up explosive plays right now, and they just make you grind it out. And you've got to be really good to grind it out. And I don't think this Purdue passing attack is a version of that. So I think those are two good ones. Mine are kind of boring. I really like this one though, because I just think like Ohio State's gonna score over 4.5 touchdowns for Ohio State plus 125 on DraftKings. Like if they don't score 5 touchdowns, are they just gonna score like, even like your pick is 38, Landis, and you're like, you're feeling like you're a little low. That's 5 touchdowns.
Yeah.
Right. Like I almost can't wrap my head around them not scoring 5 touchdowns. So, it's not very exciting because it's kind of just like betting on your score pick again. But at plus odds, I'll take it. So plus 125 on DraftKings over 4.5 touchdowns. And then this is like your bet, Austin. I just took McCord's passing touchdowns on a different site. Mm-hmm. I like your parlay because you took the 1.5 touchdowns with the yards, and then you make a nice parlay. I took 2.5 touchdowns. It's asking a little more. Plus 160 on DraftKings. But again, I think they could get this in the first half and then back this off. Maybe there's a deep one to Julian Fleming. They try to throw the ball in the red zone one time, and then there's a nice, 28-yard slot fade to Xavier Johnson kind of thing. Like, it's not even heavy lifting to get Kyle McCord. It's not like, woo, McCord. That's the thing. Like, even you're over on the McCord passing totals. I don't think that's like gunslinger Kyle. Boom, let's roll. I think that's just like normal offense Kyle might throw for 295 and 4 touchdowns. And it doesn't even feel spectacular, Austin. It just feels like functional. And so I think that's why you and I were both led toward Kyle this week.
Isn't it? Sometimes it's crazy to think about it because we've made these picks with Kyle McCord, and your point is like so well taken. Like, that's just a normal Ohio State passing attack. Imagine saying that 20 years ago or 15 years ago when you started covering this team. Like, well, it's 285 is the number. That sounds insane. It'll never happen. Like, what are you talking about? And now it's just like, that's it. That's an average week for an Ohio State quarterback, or a subpar game. Like, you gotta average 300 a week. Like, that's the way it works now. That is still sometimes crazy to like think about the development of Ohio State in this passing attack over the last 10 to 15 years.
When we come back, Northern Bets with Austin Ferentz. Next on the Ohio State Pick Show. All right, so we are trying to make fake money here. Austin is creeping toward a winning total. He is 91 cents under this year so far. He's had winning weeks each of the past 2 weeks. You hit some nice stuff last week, and you have been betting on, and you have won. You won last week on the Fighting Hawkeyes from the University of Iowa. And now you are going to the well again with the team whose quarterback completed 6 passes last week. Iowa's playing Wisconsin, and you've got a read on it, Mr. Ferentz.
Yeah, well, I guess I'm just getting bored with watching every single week an offense that throws to wide receivers and throws for a ton of yards. Like, I'm sick of it. That's why I'm so drawn to this new age era of football that is being played in Iowa City, which is winning a game without wide receivers. No wide receivers. It's so cool. I mean, I feel like this is what it's like to live in 1905, except we're talking about it on the internet. Iowa is going to win outright. I'm backing up and doubling down on the Hawkeyes. I said they were going to win the West because that's the maximum amount of chaos. Their defense is so good. I think Wisconsin is still a year away with Luke Fickell from being a real threat. Maybe they'll, prove me wrong on Saturday, but the line wasn't even appealing enough for me. Like 10.5, Brian Ferentz can cover that in his sleep. Like he's, and maybe I'm putting the credit in the wrong place, but I'm going to say it anyway. That defense is like, they're going to win this game 12-4, and that's going to cash the money line and the under of 34.5, and Iowa will be in firm control of the West. That's 625 on the parlay, by the way, at DraftKings.
That's nice. Like if you're right, Landis and I are never catching you. Did you consider like an alternate total, like a money line bet, with a 16.5 point under at plus 2,100? Did that cross your mind at all?
Doug, I'm not sure if you'd believe how much time I spent playing with the different spreads and totals on this game to find the odds that I felt like were best. Like I was like 5.5. Like they're going to win the game or they're not going to win the game. Like cover 5.5. That's stupid for Iowa. Like there's only one way that they play: slow, dumb, methodical, and low scoring, and then they win. And you don't know how it happened. And and Wisconsin's about to be like, whoa, that just happened to us.
Okay.
But yeah, I spent probably 45 minutes tinkering with the same game parlay and how low I could take that number and feel comfortable. At one point, I think like 27 I had in there. I was like, that's maybe pushing it. But I could also come up with a justification for it.
Just to double check. You're not mad at Luke Fickell, right? You're not mad.
No.
Yeah. I'm just
I know Luke Fickell, Brady Collins. I know that the program that they're installing there, like year one at Cincinnati, like it's kind of there's success for it. And maybe I'm putting too much stock into the way that they did this before, but it just takes time for the way that they coach, the program in the weight room to really take hold. And then when it does, they zoom off, they take off. But like year one has some struggles, and especially I think compounding that with this new scheme that they're running offensively, which is, a pretty decent shift in what Wisconsin has historically done and the talent that they've recruited there. It's not even that like the record is fine and they're in position to potentially win the West. I just think that there's going to still be hiccups along the way for them before next year. I mean, I'd say really look out. Like if the divisions were still aligned for 2024, there's no amount of money I wouldn't put on Wisconsin to win the West in 2024. I just am not sure that they're ready to do that in 2023.
All right, Landis, what you got for the North?
I'm just mad that Austin is putting this out into the universe. That like, what's that game going to have to look like for your bet to hit? It's disgusting. Ugh.
It's Big Ten football, baby.
Game script's like a poop emoji. I'm going with the best game of the year, biggest game of the weekend. Oregon at Washington. That's a 3:30 kick, right, Doug?
Yes. Yes.
I'm taking Oregon +3, but I'm going to do a single game parlay with the under of 67.5 as well for +250 at DraftKings. The more I have thought about this game this week, I really do. I just like Oregon. I think Oregon is more balanced both sides of the ball. I think Oregon has more balance on offense. Like if they need to win by running, I believe they can. If their passing game and all those screens get going, obviously we know what that looks like. And like, while the one way Washington can win this game is deadly and their passing attack is terrifying, like I still don't love that there's really kind of only one avenue, I think, for success for them. So like, I think Washington's very good. I think Oregon's just a little bit better. So I will take Oregon with the points. I actually think they're going to win outright, but I was too much of a coward to pick that. So I'll take the points with Oregon and I'll take the under 67.5.
All right. That's +250. And I'm going basically opposite of that on the biggest game of the year so far with Washington and Oregon, but I'm a little bit afraid of it. So I'm trying to create a bet where my game script can be right, but I don't have to wait for Washington to win my bet. So it is a three-way parlay, same game parlay, Washington team total over 35.5. Michael Penix passing yards over 349.5. That's a lot of passing yards.
Ooh.
And a Rome Odunze alternate receiving yards total over 100 yards, their number one receiver. That parlay pays +367 on FanDuel, calling it the Washington Let It Rip parlay. So they could lose 38-37 and I could win the bet, which is like why I didn't want to include a Washington win or whatever as part of it. I am very intrigued to see like if a one-dimensional team that does one specific thing about as well as we've seen anybody do that specific thing in a long time. If we want to get into Lincoln Riley, Oklahoma stuff, I still think this Washington passing offense stylistically with the quarterback, with the options at receiver can hang with anybody, but it kind of is one thing. So I'm betting on that one thing to be good. Is it good enough to win? I think so. I would pick Washington, but I don't want to bet fake money on it. So I'm leaving up in the window of like to lose, for them to lose 41-37, but still hit the bet. But really looking forward to that, as we've talked about on Kings of the North, just some like excellent Northern college football games coming down the pike with what's going to happen with Ohio State, Penn State, Michigan, with what's happening in the Pac-12, with Washington and Oregon, and you throw in USC and plus Oregon State. And I mean, there's some really good football games ahead and some fun games to bet on, and then sit back and kick back and see what happens. Austin, you will be in wild, wet, windy, wacky, weird West Lafayette on Saturday. You looking forward to the trip?
No, not especially.
Honestly,
yeah. Well, I want to prime the pump a little bit for the Notebook because my dad's going to be really disappointed. It's going to be negative because I've covered a game at West Lafayette before, and when we start, we're going to be in a closet about 5 inches from Ohio State's shower. So, there's going to be difficulty getting in and out of that spot. The weather might get weird. I'm probably going to complain about it. Like, I'm just letting everybody know that's going to be part of the Notebook. But, it's another Big Ten football game. I am blessed to cover it. Like, I could be doing something a lot worse than going on the road with Berm to cover Ohio State and Purdue. I wish that the timing was a little bit different so that I could watch some of these better games afterwards instead of driving back to Columbus, especially because there's a huge one in the Mountain West at 7:00 that everyone should be watching. Another W word, Wyoming against Air Force, which is pretty important in the New Year's Six race as an aside. But anyway, the Notebook, pregame keys, if we can get the Wi-Fi to work there, another W word. We will have snap judgments as well. Hope everybody enjoyed some of the new way that worked last week because you guys will be going live as soon as it's over.
Live post game, Landis and I will be coming through on the podcast YouTube channel live. Make sure you find us there. If you can't listen to it live, you can watch it back on YouTube. You can listen back to it on your podcast feed. But again, we continue to just have a boatload of stuff coming. And again, weird things about this game. This is Ohio State's 6th game of the season. It will be their 3rd game in Indiana, and they've played 3 games in Ohio. So Austin and Berm love the Hoosier State. We'll look forward to that coverage. We look forward to you guys being part of whatever we're doing here on the podcast. We certainly are grateful for your presence, and we appreciate you guys joining us here on the Ohio State Pick Show. For Austin Ward, for Bill Landis, for the great Jeremy Birmingham behind the scenes, I'm Doug Lesmerises, and that was the Ohio State Pick Show on the podcast.